Welcome back to the channel, guys. We're going to do our walkthrough this week for round 2 of the 87 Legends series. We are at Auto Club Speedway this week. Auto Club was opened in 1997. It's a 2-mile D-shaped oval with 14 degrees of banking in the turns. First NASCAR race was won by Jeff Gordon in 1997. So again, we are at a track that these cars did not race at. That is key here. For this race, with the way that it's going to be set up for this week, it's going to be a noon start time. Track temps will be high, probably well over 100 for this race. We're also looking at 65 laps as standard, 2 sets of tires. One thing about this track that I forgot to mention is the way the corners are set up, it will give you more confidence than you should have. Meaning you're going to try to rush the corner and you want to try to avoid doing that. Rushing the corner is just going to ruin your right side tires. I would anticipate this race going completely green flag. At least that way, if you wind up saving a set of tires for the end and there's a wreck with, say, 5 to go and somebody else has already used their tires up, you have that set at the end and you're going to wind up easily winning the race if that was the case. So try to save as much tire as possible, especially if you don't have to put tires on at about 20 laps in. So far, looking at the setup is pretty well balanced, but it's going to be a little loose in the rear, and you'll see why as we get through some of what I'm about to show you with this setup. This is going to be very what they call a Larson line kind of race. You're going to be running up near the wall trying to save those tires as much as possible. The rears will heat up, they will get loose, and that is going to absolutely kill your tires because there is going to be no way to get them to cool down. As far as trying to run that bottom line, I would save that for when you absolutely need it. The setups, kind of the way that they are, you can move a little bit off wall, you can move like a line down, but I would not try going to the bottom, as even with fresh tires, it seems to want to lose traction and start to slide coming out. Keep that in mind. As far as what I have tested coming into this week, I've ran 4 different ways to run this. I did a completely stock, the way that iRacing built it setup. I did a 14-to-1 setup with no offset. I also ran a 14-to-1 with a -4 offset and a 14-to-1 with -8 offset. So with that, my fastest lap was a 44.037 with the completely stock setup. That was the first lap I touched the track, so I'm kind of thinking I overdrove it a little bit, so I would not necessarily go off of that. Over a 15-lap run, we're seeing the right sides at 89 on the front, 83 on the rear. Right rear temp was very high, and like I said, as you're going to see with this, you've got to take care of those rear tires or your race is just flat done. I never felt like the front end was getting super loose or pushy. Granted, I only did about 20 laps to a run at most. To start off with this setup, the setup's very tight. Once you get heat into the tires, the rears start to loosen up, and then you have to really work that throttle control. As far as this setup, I think if you're one of those people that doesn't put a lot of wheel into it, and I mean very minimal, it may work for you, but I really think that one of the other setups for the front end may swing you back the other way. And when I say that, I mean it's going to bring your tire temps down and you're going to be a lot happier over the course of a long run. The 14-to-1 setup with no offset, I really liked it. It was still tight like the 12-to-1 setup was. It didn't get as loose. And I think most of that is because you're not allowing the car to be twitchy. And I say twitchy, meaning the lower the steering ratio, the quicker the car is going to turn, so the rear end's going to want to walk sideways. As far as tire wear goes, I think because of that change in the steering ratio, we were looking at 92.89 on the right side with a right rear tire temp of 244. So we dropped about 30 degrees off of that right rear. The left side tires were a 93-92, so we're seeing some more even wear. I was really happy with this. This setup did have the best tire wear, so it might be a way for you to go depending on how you drive. Again, I ran the Larson line that up against the wall kind of style with a dip right around the start finish line just to kind of shorten that up a little bit. Moving on to the 14-1 with a -4 offset. You know, I ran the same amount of laps for all of these. This setup, I seem to be able to push harder for longer. It still, again, was that Larson line runner. We're looking at tires at 90 and 86 on the rights and 92-91 on the left. The right rear tire temp was 255, but it was the most consistent across the board. It ran really well. I almost stopped here because I was actually really happy with this. I think if I would have driven it a little less hard, it would have been a little easier to keep the temps down and probably keep some tire in it. But all in all, you know, it definitely gave you confidence. Moving on to the 14-1 with a -8 offset. Setup was very smooth. You could run a little off of that high line compared to the other sets. Tires were 92-88 on the rights and 93-92 on the lefts. The right rear tire temp was back down to 244, so you're using a little less tire out of it. It kind of gave you the best of both worlds from consistent to tire wear. I was out of the 45s rather quickly down to about a 46, but I think also that was me trying to save and see what I could do with it. All right, guys, that is my walkthrough as far as this week goes. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I'll be glad to answer them. Until then, we'll see you guys at the races.